Apparently that's a fish. Good little fiberglass for you. So you can't even shake them off if you want to. That was a fish, he's still on there. Pinned to the tree. Not very big. He got bigger. He can come off there. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I suppose he hadn't fought yet. Had a pin to the tree right when he bit. It's a nice fish. He didn't look that big when he was up there shaking around on the tree. He got a lot bigger. Nice chunky one. Yes, sir. Pretty bass. The colors are awesome. Almost looks like a spring fish. But just doing a little early fall cranking right now. Nice chunk, super pretty colors on them. There's one. Swallowed it. Bass. Leader head first. That's what we like to see. You don't gotta worry about them coming off on their hook like that. Oh, did that. Yeah. Little OG slam. Flat-sided crankbait. They get a lot of attention early in the spring when the water's cold, but they definitely play again in the fall. Nice pretty little bass. Dark up north bass. Let him go. You know, flat sides are kind of thought of as a, you know, real early pre-spawn bait. Something, you know, right when the water's in the low 40s, fish are coming up, you know, shad wraps and flat sides are kind of the deal. But they also play again when the water's going down in the fall. When that water temp gets in that right zone, flat side shine again a lot. And a lot, they have their time and place when you get a lot of fishing pressure too. A lot of guys are throwing real wide wobbling, noisy crankbaits. A quiet flat side will just a little more subtle, get you a lot of bites, you know, fishing behind guys or anywhere they're seeing a lot of crankbaits. But it's definitely not just an early spring bait. The nice thing about this one, most flat sides they're super thin and really light and makes them really hard to cast, and this one's a little bulkier and it's a nice heavy bait. It throws really well, which is nice when you're fishing, you know, shoreline cover. It makes your cast a lot more accurate if you got a little weight behind the bait. There we go. Another nice one. Right out of the end of that tree. That's the thing this time of year. There's a lot of rock and wood mixed in here. This one happened to come off the wood, but you just never know. They're all good fish cover this time of year. Nice chunky little guy. He's getting fat, feeding up. Actually saw him come and eat it. So reeling up to that, I wouldn't really call it a lay down, more brushy, but up to the top of the brush pile, and right when it came over the top of it, he crunched it. Nice pretty up north bass on the OG Slim. Another cool thing about this crankbait, it comes with oversized hooks on it. It adds a lot of weight to the bait, which makes it almost suspends, so it really shines in that cold water period like that. I came up to the brush, I hit it, and I kind of stopped the bait, and it just hovers right there, and that thing just came up and smashed it. So it comes with pretty big hooks on it, a lot bigger than you'd expect on the size crankbait, but that's for a reason. That hook weight basically makes that bait almost neutrally buoyant. It's a real slow float, enough to where, you know, if you get in some wood or on a rock, you can give it slack and it'll still float up a little bit, but it's real slow. And that's kind of key in this colder water temperature. A lot of those real buoyant baits want to float up real quick, and that makes them a little more snag resistant, but when you get around that cover and you can let that bait just kind of hover there, that's a really good way to trigger fish in this, you know, a little bit cooler water. In my eyes, this bait's more of, with that rounded bill, it's more of a, you know, hard bottom rock, gravel, sand crankbait. It's decent around the wood, but if you're really gonna just focus on the wood, you're probably better off, you know, throwing a square bill or something, but this will still come through. You just gotta be a little more patient with it. Where the square bill, you can kind of crash it into the stuff. This one, you kind of gotta worm through the wood, but you know, when that water's cold, sometimes they like that bait going through there a lot slower than when the water's warmer. I'm pretty much doing all my cranking with the exception of like real deep cranking, big plugs. I do almost all of it on the same rod, and a little exception on like shad wraps and stuff, I'll go to a different rod, but any of my square bill and down to 10, 12 foot diving plugs, I throw it's actually a 7-foot 4-inch heavy. It's a composite rod, a bit of fiberglass, bit of graphite. Keeps it nice and light and sensitive compared to a fiberglass rod, and it's actually designed for a chatterbait rod. It's pretty stiff as far as a cranking rod goes, but the action's really slow, if that makes any sense. Like when a fish slacks you, it doesn't spring as fast as a graphite rod will. And that's kind of the key to landing fish on treble hook baits. It's a pretty powerful rod. Like I said, it's made for chatterbait fishing. It's the same rod I throw my chatterbait on. It looks pretty stiff, but it bends really slow. Like when a fish slacks it, my rod just doesn't snap back right away, and that's kind of the key to catching treble hook fish. And then I crank on a little faster reel than most guys. A lot of guys like 6.3. I like a 7-to-1. I just feel like I got more control of the bait. And mostly that's for just making up for the boat speed. You know, if I'm shallow cranking, I'm going down the bank, I got the trolling motor cranked up, I'm heading towards my bait a lot. So I think jumping to that 7-1 kind of makes up for the speed the boat's traveling towards the bait. You know, if I want to speed it up real quick, a couple cranks, I can get a lot more speed out of it doing that way, which I can't do with the 6.3. Or if, you know, I'm reeling along, one just slack lines it, I can catch up to them real quick. Or, you know, if I get a little piece of grass on my bait or something, I can get it in quicker, what have you. It's just, the only time I really go to 6.3-to-1 is like straight winter fishing, like super, super cold, low 40s, high 30s. The rest of the year I crank on a 7-to-1. Right now I got 12-pound Suffix Advanced fluorocarbon on here. I do most, there's one, little guy. Do most of my cranking with 12 or 14, with the exception of, you know, square bill and heavy cover. Then sometimes I'll go up to as much as 20-pound line, but and I will go down to 10 sometimes. Not a big guy, but nice little chunk. We'll go down to 10 sometimes just to get a little more depth out of a bait, but 9 times out of 10 for me, it's 12-pound. You just get a little more abrasion and resistance. You're bouncing off rocks and wood, and you can break off pretty easy on 10 if you're not real careful checking your line all the time. Where 12, I can kind of get away with rubbing some rocks and rubbing some trees and stuff and not really have to worry about retying all the time. As far as the retrieve goes, you can do a lot of different things. I'd say the worst thing you can do is straight reel. Unless you're really, you know, bouncing bottom really good and bouncing off stuff. Even then, I think you're better off mixing it up. And I don't mean like crazy, like, you know, burn it 5 cranks, stop it. A lot of it's just real subtle, just, you know, a little bit of a speed up, a little bit of a slow down, but, you know, your speed should always be constantly changing with a crankbait. I mean, basically that's the 2 ways you get bit on a crankbait. It's either, you know, deflecting off cover where your bait kicks out, fish, you'll get a reaction strike that way, or just changing speed. And it doesn't have to be anything crazy. Just a quick handle turn, a little slower handle turn, a little twitch of the rod, but the whole time that bait's coming back to the boat, with the exception, you know, the first few cranks when I'm trying to get my bait down, I'm always somewhat changing my reel speed. Like I said, it doesn't have to be anything crazy drastic, but just subtle little, you know, just a little pump, pause, there's one right there. barely got it, good one too. But I just kicked a little pause in there and he slammed it. And if I was straight reeling, that fish might have just followed the bait and never eaten it. And he didn't get it real good, but I mean, he reacted to it. And we got him hooked up. It's a pretty nice fish. Just one in the bottom chin. Oh, got two in there for me now. But beautiful fish. Nice fall bass on the OG Slim. Yeah, he just had that first one in him, then when I was messing with him at the side of the boat, he got the other one in him. Usually it goes the other way around, but pliers. I don't know if you noticed that, but it was just a little pause. That's all that was, just a half-second pause in the reel handle. It was not coming off. And that's what triggered that fish. And like I said, if I just kept reeling, he might have just followed the bait and not eaten it. But that triggered him. One little pause. Beautiful bass. Not a monster, but a nice one. I'll take those all day. Another thing that a composite rod does for me, personally, versus and it's kind of the same deal with a chatterbait, versus a straight graphite rod. It kind of slows me down on the hook set and lets the fish get it a little bit better, just because I can't feel everything so well. Like, that's the problem with a chatterbait. You're so in tune with it, it vibrates so hard that, you know, the second, he might not even have it yet, he's running up on it and about to eat it or whatever. The second you feel anything different, you swing right away. Where this rod, being a little slower like that, I don't really feel them till they get it and start pulling back, and that's really when you want to set the hook, because you can, you know, on baits like a crankbait or a chatterbait, you can pull it away from them before they get it, just because, you know, these rods are, you can feel everything so good on a graphite. Like, literally the second that first vibration misses, you feel it, and a lot of times that's just the fish, you know, tracking the bait about to overtake it. Where with that fiberglass and that slower tip really allows them to get the bait, turn, and then load into your rod. And the castability of this crankbaits, compared to any other flat side I've ever thrown, second to none. Most of them are real thin, real light. You know, they twirl a lot in the wind, and this one's a nice heavy bait. You can really make some pinpoint accurate casts, which is important when you're cranking. Everybody thinks more flipping and stuff needs to be more accurate, but you know, if you're fishing a sharper shoreline where you got to keep your bait real tight, or if you're, you know, fishing around laydowns, 6 inches left or right can make all the difference in getting a bite or not. And having a bait that throws really good really helps with putting it right where you need to.